Okay, it's about 1 o'clock and I want to get started today. Again, I'm Larry Hamilton. Thanks for watching my YouTube painting channel today. We're going to be doing two watercolor paintings today. And if you've been watching for a few minutes, you may have seen the sample photos up there that we're going to be using as our reference photos. And I'm going to show you how I broke those down and created the value map and the sketch for each one. And then I got a little surprise later on in the program today. Between paintings, as I switch my canvas, I have a little video I'm going to show you of the area that I was actually hiking when I took the second photo. And so without any more here at the easel, I'm going to go over to my computer and bring up the reference photo and talk to you about the value map and my sketch and so forth. Be right back. Okay, here I am at my computer now, and I want to show you that full photo of the first painting we're going to do. This was a photograph of the area where we stayed recently in Montana. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were in Montana in an area called Nez Perce, and it's an area that has a lot of significance into the original explorers that went out that way and found their way through North America. And there's a ranch out there called Nez Perce Ranch, and this is part of the property. There's a lake in the back, not a lake, but this lake is on the property, but behind it is something called the Nez Perce River, or creek, I guess it is, but it's has a lot of water running in it. And so anyway, we were staying in a cabin on this property, and it was very beautiful, so I took this photo. I actually went down and sat on that little dock there and painted a rough watercolor of that area. And so I thought this would make a nicer painting to paint for you guys today, so that's what we're going to do. I have made my value map as usual. Gone in and sort of tried to make everything in about 3 values, and it has a lot more values in it than that, but at least to simplify it as much as possible, I'm going to use this as my value map for the first painting. And so we'll do that, and then the sketch, I'll show you that here. This sketch will be on my website when I get the video edited in about 2 or 3 days after today's broadcast, and you'll be able to print it off and copy it and use it to try this painting yourself. The second painting we're going to do is that other photo, and I'm going to come back and talk to you a minute about that after we get started. After we finish the first painting, I need some time to change my easel around, and so I'll let you watch a little video. I took a video of a hike that we took out there in this second area, and I actually have a little surprise to show you when we get to that. So anyway, I want to get going here, and I'm going to head back over to my easel and put that back on the broadcast, and we will get started. Okay, here I am. We're going to get the camera set up here. I want to zoom in and get my painting area about as good as I can get it here. I think I can move it in just a little more, and maybe a little bit, let's see, like about right. I have my camera controls here that let me manage this. They do have a little bit hard to control. I also have my palette here that I want to put on, and so I'm going to go through my palette now first, and I do this usually every painting, just so you know what we're painting with, what tools I'm using, and what paints. It's probably getting old to some of you now that have been following me for a while. But anyway, the brushes I have here are a set of Sterling Edwards brushes. I have a medium and a small here. These are, he calls them blending brushes. They're made with bristle. They're actually a bristle brush, and have some neat effects that you can get with those brushes. I have a couple of flats. I have a 1-inch flat and a 1/2-inch flat. I have 3 rounds. I have a number 12, a number 8, and a number 4. And I have a little rigger here that goes with the set. So I kind of use this set all the time to do my watercolors. It seems to work well for me, and I'm pretty happy with it. With the paints, these are Mary Blue transparent watercolors, very beautiful watercolors from Italy, Maro from Italy. And I want to go through the colors here and tell you what I got. This is neutral tint. I have a primary blue cyan, ultramarine blue, ultraviolet, crimson lake, primary red magenta, cadmium red, burnt sienna, raw sienna, and yellow ochre. On the outside row here I have cupric green, sap green, lemon yellow, and primary yellow. On the inside row here I have burnt umber, still to grain brown, and Auvergne orange. So those are my set of colors, and may not use all of those. I may not use all of the brushes, but that's what I have to work with, and that's what I use for most of my paintings. And so let me put that palette down in the corner and recheck my adjustment on my camera settings here to make sure you guys can see everything. If you can see that cream colored tape around the edges, you can see the whole screens, or the whole paper. So we're painting today again on 11 by 14 paper, and it's a 300-pound Fabriano Artistico cold press paper, and very nice paper. I like to use it. I use it almost all the time. And so let's get started. I'm going to move here. As I see Scarpy's got to leave in about 50 minutes. Well, I should be done with one painting in that time, I hope. So we're going to start with this and get some water on here so I can get a nice, smooth, soft background. I should tell you, we were out there two weeks ago, and the area we stayed is south of Missoula, Montana, about 80 some miles. So we flew into Missoula and drove 80 miles south to this area called Nez Perce Ranch, and we spent a week there in a cabin, and every day we would get up and have breakfast early. Temperatures were in the upper 40s each night, and during the daytime temperatures got up to about 80, 82, 85, something like that every day. But the sad part was that we had there were fires in the area north of Missoula, and they're still out there, and so much of the beauty that you would see with the blue skies and the mountains, we really didn't get a chance to see. It was just so smoggy and foggy. We'd get up in the morning and everything was just sort of grayish around us, and so that was a little bit sad to see. But forest fires are still a problem out there, and so I'm picking up a little of my ultraviolet here, and I'm going to use that as my sort of my background color. It will really soften off, but I want to get some of that across here and just make a real light wash for the background here. It should make it so soft here you hardly can see it. You probably can't see the sketch either. As a matter of fact, I did use my kneaded eraser and sort of took some of that sketch off of there from my transfer paper, and I didn't want to have a lot of pencil lines showing up. I'm going to go ahead and just put this down in the water area and just put a whole underpainting of this down here, and just very lightly tint the whole paper here. And I'm sure you can't see that very well, but it's there. And I'm going to put a little bit darker here in the top area a little bit. I'm using this medium bristle brush. It's about 1.5 inches wide, I guess, 2 inches wide maybe. So let's just put that in there and let that soften off a little bit, and make sure we don't have any stuff running down on the paper. Okay, you can see a little bit of a color at the top. Finally, I got a little bit in there. This will even dry lighter than that. Watercolors always dry approximately 20, maybe 30% lighter than you put them on. So you have to take that into account when you're picking how strong you want the color to be when you put it on your paper. That's pretty well the way I want it. Maybe I'll pull a few lines down this way and get some other strokes in there. That'll maybe help it pull down a little bit. Okay, so much for that. I'm going to pick up now my 1-inch brush. I have a lot of trees. There's a lot of fog. This was actually grayer than this when we actually saw the photo, and I just got way too much blue paint on my brush. I put some new paint out today, and as usual, it really is strong. So I'm going to put in some background trees here that have a little bit of, I did the same thing with my neutral tint. It's very, very strong. I forget when I put new paint in here that it really, really is soft, and it comes out very easily. It almost takes over your palette if you're not careful. Pick up a little of my burnt sienna here. I'm mixing that. When I mix that with my blue, I get a gray. So I'm looking for something that's gray, has some blue in it and some gray in it, and it's darker than what's in the sky. I'm talking a little bit to try to let that sky dry out a little bit, because I want these background trees to have sort of a bluish gray tint to them. And so I'm going to start right in here and see if we can put in some things with just using the side of the brush. Got a big glob of blue there. Where'd that come from? Oh, I got that off my paper towel. No wonder. Well, you get to see me make some mistakes here, folks. I was afraid that was going to happen when I put that paint out, that I would end up getting it in my brush, and sometimes that happens. Now I can take my brush and hopefully get rid of some of it. So I'm just putting in now some background trees here that have mixtures of blue, neutral tint. They're supposed to be very, very light and soft back there, which turns out that's kind of what's happening. And it may not be dark enough. I may need to come back and do a little more work on it, but let me just put in here as much as I can, and we'll put that in and let it sort of soften off back there. A lot of trees. Couldn't hardly see some of them because of the other trees in the foreground, but put little tops on them, make this top edge. So if you drew a line that you don't have a straight line, that you don't have a lot of peaks and valleys, make it a sort of a graceful line, I guess you might call it. It's one of my commandments I sort of follow. Mauro asked me if I stretch the paper. No, I don't. Because I'm using 300-pound paper, it really holds its shape. It resists buckling. It is buckling just slightly, but it's not enough. If I had 140-pound paper on here, Mauro, I would be having a lot of buckling going on. And so because it is such a heavyweight paper, it doesn't buckle nearly as much as a 140-pound paper would. Question from Anne. Yes, it will be saved on my channel. I actually go back and re-edit this. I've got 4 cameras recording what I'm doing here, Anne. One's in YouTube itself. There's a backup going on there. I have a streaming video being recorded on my main computer that's streaming this video to you. And then I have 3 cameras in the room. One is focused on my palette here. One is the one you see me looking at right here, and then there's another camera on this right side over here. And it is recording a side view in case I happen to step in front of the paper, which I do periodically. If I get too involved in the painting, sometimes I step in front of the paper itself, and you can't see what's going on. So I have these other cameras so I can edit a final version and give you something nice to look at as the final recorded copy. So yeah, you're not going to miss anything if you can't watch the whole thing. I will be putting it out, and but it takes me a few days to sort of get that done. Just putting in some nice soft stuff here that's, I think I want to put in a few more back here. These start getting picking up a little green. I'm going to pick up a little of my sap green. The ones on the left, I want to change the color a little bit. I don't want them to be same color as what I got going on over here, so I'm going to put in a few more background trees back here, sort of define this back area. There's really a big mountain back there that was behind, that kind of goes down in between these creeks that are out here. And so I want to put that in, put this over here. Yep. Ask me questions, folks. If you have a question, just type it in the window. I keep checking. I have a computer right up here by my left elbow, and I can check it and hopefully answer your questions. I picked up a little more of my sap green here. I'm putting in another layer of some greener trees in front of this. And they're going to soften off as well. It's going to be a real soft background. I want some of that green over here too. I don't want it to be totally on one side, but there's more green on the left than there is the right. So I'm going to just sort of lightly reference that over here, and I think I've got that down far enough. I may need to pull this down a little more over here. So we'll do that. Put in some other colors. This thing has a lot of green in it, and I tried to not put a ton of green. I noticed when I sat on the little swimming platform there and painted, the green that I saw outdoors was, when I got done, it was just way too much green in the final painting that I did, and I really wanted it to be less green. So I'm trying to address that here by making it less green than it was, and putting in these grays and putting in some this dark sienna gives us a sort of mutes those greens down a little bit, even turns the greens a little bit gray. So I'm getting some running here that's kind of coming down to the bottom, and I'm just going to blot it. Flick up. Got a lot of heavy green in here. Just put in a few strokes that make it look like we got something going on there. All right. Got little things of paint there that I don't particularly like, but that's going to be covered up anyway. So I'm really just trying to set the background in. The sky is really light. The background trees are just a little bit darker, and then they're going to get darker as we come forward. I have in here, I want to make sure I protect the front edge of this. There's a creek that runs back in here. I want to save that if I can. It's really hard to see on the photograph, but I want to save that if I can remember to do it. We've got another tree coming up here. I'm leaving some room for some trees in here. Right in here, let's see. Having to look at my photograph a little bit more to keep track of what's going on here. Okay, I want that to come down top of that water back there. Okay, that's nice light, light tone. Okay. Yeah, well, thanks, Kim. Thank you for the thought. I haven't thought about writing a book. I am retired, and so I just sort of do what I love to do when I love to do it. And taking on another project after working for as many years as I did, it just doesn't quite appeal to me like it might have a few years ago. But yeah, it's not a bad idea. I have a lot of thoughts I've pulled together, a lot of techniques I've learned by taking workshops and that sort of thing. So I've got a lot to share, so I just kind of do it and let you guys take advantage of it without having to go take expensive workshops. Some of the workshop painters probably don't like me doing this because I may be using some of their ideas, but they're making plenty of money. There's plenty of watercolor workshops going on out there. So I want to just touch up this a little bit up here. I got too many angles up there to make it look like they're squared off, and these aren't squared off trees at all. They're just sort of, my flat brush kind of left them that way. But all right, enough of that. Let's move on. I got this area here, has a lot of green in it, a lot of big bushes here in front of this little swimming platform. Greens down here. Got some big trees in here. I think maybe I'll go put some of those trees in. I got some very light color back here. I'm going to hit this area in the background. It's got some yellow and green in it, and I want to get that in. Try to paint from light to dark. Typically in watercolors, you start with the lightest values and paint to the darkest values for the most part. Some artists don't do that, but I find it much easier. If you start light, you can always darken things up. When you get things dark, it's hard to lighten them up sometimes. So in this area back here, we've got a bit of green grass back there. Put a little sap green in there, sort of green it up in some areas. But it just sort of runs behind everything. Back here, there's another set of trees I'm going to put in the middle, but it just sort of runs behind. I just want to get this thing in back there that looks like that. Mix it up, put some more yellow in it, lighten it up. I'm just putting this nice light yellow color in back there. That's going to be covered up with trees over on the right, and it runs over into this tree right about here, and it sort of runs out. Okay, so I've got a little gradation in color, a little darker at the back and lighter at the front, and so you want to try to gradiate your colors as much as possible. Variegate them. Some people call it variegation, some call it gradation. It's basically trying to get it to go from light to dark or dark to light, warm to cool, cool to warm, something to change that color a little bit. So I've got a row of darker bushes I'm going to put in back here. I got some nice vertical trees to put in. Then it gets greener and darker as it comes toward the water down here. So I think that's all of that color I want to put in. I may want to put a little bit more in the foreground here in a minute, but right now I think I'm going to stop with that, and I'm going to pick up a darker green now. I've got my sap green, but I can use my yellow colors. I can use this lemon yellow, and I can use my blues. I can use my ultra blue and put it in there. So this is the fun thing you can do. You don't have to just play with the green that's out of the tube, but you see when I mix my lemon yellow and ultra blue, see the green I get is much different than, this is pure sap green right here. It's much better color, different color. If I use my other yellow over here, I've got this primary yellow, which has more orange in it. So I've got two yellows. I have a yellow with orange in it, I have a yellow with green in it. So I can use my two blues along with those, and I can get more colors of green by mixing ultra blue with primary yellow. And I get a different color if I mix it with lemon yellow. And if I use my other blue, this cyan blue, it already has some green in it. So if I mix that with my lemon yellow, I get a different color green. I don't know if it's easy for you to see that or not, but let me put that full screen, and you can see the mixtures that I'm making here by using, this is cyan blue with lemon green, this is ultra blue with lemon green, this is pure sap green. Down here I've got primary yellow, and I've already touched it with some ultramarine blue. If I put in some cyan blue over here, I'm going to get entirely another green. So you can see all the different greens that you can get by just doing that. If I put in some of my neutral tint, some of these greens, whoops, I got way too much on there. My yellow, this particular yellow, put that in and put some neutral tint with it. I have some neutral tint right here on my palette. It'll start giving me sort of an olive color, olive green. So you see how many flavors of green that you can get by just using those colors that are in a palette, two blues and two yellows, and a little bit of that neutral tint. So let me put that back on here. And so I'm going to start with my darker greens here. I want some, sometimes I'll put some even of more dark of my ultramarine blue in here. And let me see, right in here I want to start putting in some trees that are in the sort of middle ground back here. Picking that up, getting some more blue in there, darken it down just a little. Got a couple of trees here that sort of, I'm going to kind of run them together and run them down here into this area. Pick up another, get some of this yellow and make a bush down here that sort of goes into it and ties it into the ground down here behind it. And so one thing I'll do when I do my video editing after this is I usually overlay on the screen the photograph, and I let you see that as I'm painting it here. So I'll put the photograph over here and you can kind of watch to see how close I'm coming to it or not. And sometimes that helps when you're watching it after the painting is done. Okay, you've got some there. This is a big tree going up. There's another tree over there. I've got a bunch of stuff coming in over here on this side. Might as well just put those in now while I got this green in my brush. Pick up some more yellow. Yeah, good idea, Heather, about making some notes. I do have a lot of notes, and I have collected a lot of notes from some of the workshops I've attended, and I would be able to use those and create my own book or notes. Probably an e-book would be more appropriate, I would guess. But I'm just going to put in here some of these very light and loose colors up there, a little bit darker, kind of close this corner off so you don't go looking out there. Let me see if my water is right there. It's a little, if you get the water level just right in your painting, if you take a razor blade or even the back of your painting knife or painting brush, you can scrape out some areas that have, if you get it just right, you'll scrape out something and leave a white mark there. If you get it too late, it won't do anything. If you get it too soon, it will actually fill back in and make a black mark there. So there's a little bit of art work in trying to make these things where you scrape out with your palette knife, or not palette knife, with your razor blade. I'm just kind of bring this all down. It comes all the way down here and just fills this all in. It's a big bunch of trees on the side, on the right here. So I'm going to just kind of put as much of that in there as I can right now, just let that go. This other area up here that I already put you see this, I don't know if you can see that, but this one turned dark. So that meant I scraped it out too soon. The one next to it has got a little bit of lightness in it, and this one may be just about right. I don't know. I'll try it and see. Yeah, it scraped it out and kind of pushed the paint to the right. So I now have that paint that it actually looks like a tree trunk going up through there, which was my objective. And that's just a neat little trick that many artists use. Come back and I can put in dark trunks in there and keep that going if I want. But right now that's all I want to do. If I get it to just the right amount of wetness, and that's, I can't tell you how much that is. It all depends on how much water's in your paper, how much water's in your brush. When you put the paint on, it's sort of almost by accident you get the right amount of stuff in there. It does the thing you want to. So these are coming down. They're going to get darker as they come down. I'm going to go down in here. I'm using a 1-inch brush, folks. I haven't used anything other than the brush I put the water on with. This is all 1-inch brush. Put a few more things back in here, maybe to darken that area up so it doesn't look like there's so many holes in there. Get too many whites in there, you get your eye distracted over there, particularly if they're on the edge of the paper like this. You want to get them like that. Okay, so that's looking pretty decent over there. We want to come back. I got a nice light area there. I can put another bush in if I want. Get ready for this this big tree here. I'm going to see if I can get some other colors in this green. I'm picking up a little dark sienna and my sap green, some of my yellows, put a little blue in there, see if I can get a different green color. And I'm going to try to do this again, since now this paper is fairly dry. I'm going to use as much dry brush. That's what I used over here, some dry brush. Dry brush doesn't mean your paint is dry. It just means that there's less water in it, and you can get some of the water out by touching your paper towel like this. And when you do that, you end up getting some very nice, let me make sure I'm at the right spot. This one is over here. Okay. This is the one I'm thinking about painting. Let's see. I got to get my trunk straight here. Let's see. This is that one. This is that one. Okay. I was at the right place. This is it. Yeah, right in here. Okay. So put in this big old tree up here. And when I give it that sort of fast brush with the amount of paint in my brush, using this, again, this is based on the fact I've got this 300-pound cold press paper, and it just gives me this very nice wispy looking trees. Great for pine trees. It works with palm trees. It works with about any kind of tree, but it's the brush stroke itself that you have to get work on to make sure that it's fast and loose and gives you some very nice looking trees. It actually starts turning brown down here. I want to put in something brown in there. And because that paint behind it's dry, now I'm just painting over it, and I'm going to get myself a round brush here and pull me some still to grain brown out. Put a little blue in it to gray it down just a bit, and see if I can get a nice little tree trunk color in here. It goes about like this. Something like that. That may be too close to the water, but that's all right. I've got a couple of trees in here. One is in the foreground, one's in the background. So just picked up a second brush first time. When you do this, you want to try to make sure you put a little bit of that color up somewhere else in there so that people know that that trunk is continuing on up. It's not just not just at the bottom. See here, okay. Now I've got some paint that's turned dark back there, or turned dry, so now I can come back and put another layer, a darker layer, over the top of that. And I kind of get some of this interesting colors in there again, interesting texture where these trees are overlapping each other and sort of coming down into this area. An area of white back here that I didn't get filled in. I may have to come back and do a little work on that. Again, it's these little flaky brush strokes that just sort of give you this interesting flavor and makes it look, I think, fairly realistic. Needs to be darker down here because I'm getting in front of something that is about the same value. If you get the same value here, you end up with something that you can't tell the difference between the tree and the bush in front of it. So you want to do something to darken one or the other, or lighten one or the other. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. Just going to come down here and put this more stuff down here. There we go. Paint it down. I'm going to just cover up some of this white area in here with this big base of this tree. It's really kind of large. And all right, I keep turning around looking back behind me, folks. I have a monitor behind me and I can see what you guys are seeing, hopefully. Put some more trees over here, little dark trees. See, I've got some nice soft greens back there in the background, so I can kind of come in front of that and put in some more trees here, some more bushes, and it just adds depth. Every time you put a layer over something, you're adding depth, and that just lets your viewer really enjoy the painting. It looks like it has some depth. It looks like there's something going on in there that behind these trees, which is why I put that yellow background in there. I wanted that to get dry, and so by doing that, I was able to come back now and paint over it. Okay. Hi, John. How are you? Welcome. I'm going to do a couple of pulls with this little brush has an angle on it. I can go in there and put in a few pull down strokes with it. The sun, there wasn't much sun in this thing. It was pretty much behind everything. And it was just leaving almost a silhouette for me to look at. All right, now I got this little tree here. I got another little tree coming up here, so I'm gonna see if I can put in his trunk first. And something like that. He goes up, and they go, most of these trees are all go right off of the paper at the top because they're so tall. And just want to kind of show you that. Still the grain brown, a little bit of blue in it, not much. It gives me sort of a grayish color. And got another big one over here. I'm going to use my round brush for that. I think I can get a better. This big white or big 1-inch brush is a little bit too They are actually a little lighter on this side. So I'm going to put in a little bit of bead of clear water. It's another trick for doing tree trunks. The side you want to be lighter. Just run a bead of clear water down there. You can't see that, but it's there. And when I come back now with my color, whatever color I want to make it, again, it's sort of a grayish brown. So I'm using blue and still to green brown, ultra blue and still to green brown. When I come back here now and put this in, I start up here. Where is it? There's the top. Come down, and as I come down, that on the right side will soften and give me a nice little blended, rounded edge to the right side of that tree. And I don't have to try to paint it. I can go back over it and sort of, it's automatically lighter just because of that, but it's a nice little trick to get some lightness in one side of your tree if you have a clear area where the sun's coming from. So I painted these trees over here by putting in the branches and the all of the leaves or whatever they are and first, and then I came back and put the trunk in. This side I'm doing the trunk first, and I'm going to come back and put in the branches and the pine branches and pine boughs and all of that on top of it. Same thing over here on this this particular tree right here. Run a little bead of water. I'm just using my flat brush now for the bead of water. It's not heavy, just a little light bead of water. It has a little color in it, but I'm going to come back now with my round brush, start at the top and come down and just sort of let it run, hit and miss, do something so it's not all one solid thing, even though those things were solid and very stately and very strong looking. Put the dark on the left side and let it sort of bleed to the right side. So I end up with very interesting looking shapes here and nice color scheme. Okay, darker on the left. This down the bottom, I want to run it right into the, I'm going to put bushes over it, so I'm going to soften the bottom of this so that it doesn't have a hard edge down there. And I'm going to be putting some bushes in front of that. All this up in here is bushes. There's some more trees back in there. But basically that's what I want to do there. Okay, let's see. I'm going to let that dry, and while that's drying, I'm going to come over here and start working on some of these trees on the left side. Get a different color green. I'm going to use my ultra blue and pick up maybe some of this lemon yellow, see what that does. It's going to give me a different color green. I'm not using my cyan blue. I think that blue is almost too harsh. So I'm going to come in here and just sort of put in now some trees over here that go off the top of the paper. And I have already left a space for a tree trunk in there. It's already, I left it unpainted. So I'm going to leave that if I can leave it without destroying too much. And just bring this down into these areas here. I've got a bunch of bushes that come down. So the same idea, dry brush where you can and get it down into here, pull up some of these. Bring in some darker colors in here to show another layer of trees. I'll just tack into this back one back there and make it look like have another pine tree back there. Using the same technique I use over here on the right side, which is paint the tree branches and boughs first and then come back and put the trunk in the middle. I think that's looking decent. Get a little running down here, careful. I'll pick up some more of my yellows here, brighten this up a little bit. So as this green with yellow in it, yellow with green in it, as it dries off, it's going to be light. And then I'm going to be able to come back and put in dark over the top of it, and I'm going to be able to define more of these bushes. But right now I'm just sort of laying in almost a base color, if you will. Change it up a little bit, add some other colors. Now this was just a whole series of bushes and things that stuck out over the water and that sort of thing. Kind of taking my time with this today, folks. I may run over my 2-hour limit, I don't know, but hope you can stay with me. I'd rather take my time and give you something of pretty high quality than try to rush through it and meet some artificial time limit. Okay, these are all coming out over the water like that. Okay, so I have a tree that looks like it's setting back in here, up here, without any real trunk. So let me go back and pick up a little of my brown color and see if I can drop in a few things that look like some trunks back there. Maybe this I left white. Maybe I'll put in a little bit of a trunk on it, so at least you can see something there. Over here I'm going to pop in just a few things that look like there are some other trees back there. This is a big forest. There's a ton of stuff going on back here. It's all along. There's a big, what you really can't see is there's a big mountain back here. This is all stuff growing on the mountain, and because I was physically there, I don't have to rely on the photograph for what I remember, since it was just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to come back and put in a few more dark shapes in here to sort of define some of the bushes and brush that's in here. Picking up some of my neutral tint, mixing it with this green that I have so I can darken it down just somewhat. And put these in, and hopefully it's going to give me what I want here. This has to really be darker down here at the bottom by the water. So I'm going to put these in, throw in some stuff like this. Leave that water back there in the back. Okay, and over here I've got a little bit of darkness coming in. Darker, darker, darker. Okay, Heather, thanks for your comment. Art has no time limit. Well, it doesn't. When I kind of advertise that it's going to be done by 3 o'clock, I'd like to do it if I can, but if not, I'd rather take the time and show you a good painting and give you something that you can try that's a little more finished than rushing through something. So let's just put in a few more bush type things here. Bushy type things, and I've got a lot of different colors of green. I've got dark colors, and I've got some yellow in there, and so I'm really getting a good mixture of these greens in there. So I don't want to be all one color of green, so I'm just sort of mixing it up a little bit, throwing in some bushes, some dry brush, hard edge, soft edge. All right, that's good for that. Over here we start getting in some more of the grasses that sort of lay behind this lake back here. So I'll just throw in a few of those things there with the brush. Pull up on it and just sort of give me some nice grassy things here that hopefully represent the edge of this water. Back in here, I've got this area a little bit undefined back here. That was actually the water, the creek back there that was running, and I want to try to preserve that. Let me go back before I get too far away from it and see if I can add a little more definition back there in the background. This area, it was kind of a little bit foggy and smoggy back there, but I want to sort of define the edge of this water back there somewhere if I can. Also help me define the edge of this tree right here, you see? And I want that to be a little more gray, a little less green. So if you put that same color on one side of the tree, come out the other side of the tree with the same color, and you will have a nice, believable background behind that tree. Okay, so that's a good way to make an object stand out, is to paint one side and come out the other side with the same color. As a little tip that you might like. It just helps make it believable when you do that. Okay, you're starting to see a little bit of that. You don't know that's a river back there, but it is. I told you it was. Therefore, you have to believe me. It's in here, this little guy needs to be a little darker. We've got some other rocks and things in this foreground here, in this area. A bit too much. I just had some shadows in here. A little bit too dark. Lighten it up. Clear water, and back over it and lighten it up. Make it a shadow. Back in here, there's some shadows. Almost too dark still. Take my brush and just sort of run along that top edge and lighten it up. Do the same thing here that I told you on the other side, is put that same shadow on the right side, put in some paint, and then just sort of pull it. So I'm helping you believe this tree is casting a shadow down here on the ground. These other trees are doing something similar. Down here, you're putting out little shadows. So it's making, at least there's some light, a light source is making it look like we've got some light hitting on these things. Plus the shadow pulls that base of the trunk of the tree down into the ground, so you don't have it looked like it was glued on before. So, all right, enough of that. Let me see here. I'm going to grab a little smaller brush, 1/2-inch brush, pick up some of this stuff that's in my palette, and just sort of come along here and put in a little more of an edge on this side of the creek back there, so you can at least think there's something going on back there, and it helps define that area. And darken up the bottom of that touches the water down here. Just put in some little brush flicks, not much, just something to darken that up. It helps add the three-dimensionality to it. It helps add the thought that you have something going on back there that's not just plain fogginess. Kind of making some of this stuff up. It's not really in the photo necessarily, but I'm doing it so that I don't leave a big white area back there with nothing going on. So basically I'm trying to define for you this back edge of this creek, and by just putting some darks down here at the bottom, I can define that for you. And there we go. So I'll just leave it like that. All right, over here now, back to my greens, and let me get another paper towel here. Yeah, good point, Heather. I used to say it was 1 to 3:30 was always my, but I've been doing these paintings so quickly lately that I thought, well, 3 o'clock, maybe that will keep people a little more interested. And not bore them so quickly, but because I do watercolor so quickly generally, I've been able to do 2 of them in about the same amount of time that I do 1 oil painting. So when I do oils, it's usually a couple hours. All right, step back, look at that, see what it looks like to me. I think I'm getting a nice set of shades and values and colors in there. I could be putting just a little more trunk definition in these trees on the right here, this area. Just a little bit maybe. Gonna make it straight, you're gonna put a trunk in there. Something like that, just some dark to help define that a little more. Okay, now over here I really didn't put any branches on these trees yet here, so I need to do that before I get this green out of my palette. So I'm going to go back, sap green, a little bit of this yellow, lemon yellow, and using my big brush here, see if I can put in some more. It's almost too light, I need to get it darker. Put a color on, look at it. If you don't like it, come back and change the color right away. With watercolors, you have to do that, otherwise you lose the ability. If you don't get it when it's fast, you gotta. So putting some of that in helps a little bit. Darken it up a little bit more. I don't have enough dry brush in here. I need to get some more of that. There we go. That's what I've been trying to get, something like that. They do tend to curl down some. Over here, this other tree's got the same issue over here. I want to put in few little parts that are hanging out like this, and the other one over here beside it has got some similar types of stuff, although he's a little fuller over here. So just pop in some colors. Spend a lot of time on this background, folks, but I think the water is going to go fairly quickly. Maybe time consumer there might be the little swimming dock. Okay, so just throw a few little jobs in there like that, a few more over here. Leave it light and airy if you can. I got a big glob up here I don't like, but see if I can tie that in. I'm going to come up and put some other branches in there. Come in and get my little light rigger here. Pick up some of this color that's in this palette, green and brown, and sort of put in a few branches that sort of connect these together. So if I put that in, it starts telling you there's a lot of little branches that sort of stick in here and come out. It's almost like finishing details, but if I don't put it in now, I'll probably forget it. So I want to go do as much of that as I can right now. Little things like that just help tell the story even better. Put something in there. All right, maybe a couple over here on this tree and then call it quits here. Let's get too much going on in there and look too busy. All right, stop. Stop with that. All right, it's time to start on the water. And I do the water like I do, always do the water. I wet the paper, so I'm going to come back and get me some nice clear water here out of my other container. I keep 2 containers here on my table. One is clear water and one is dirty. And as long as I don't mix them up, I'm okay. If I mix them up, I have to stop and go get some more clean water. Okay, so I've got clear water here, and make sure I don't get it running into this swimming platform. I'm going to come back and take it out of there. I don't mind it below the swimming platform, but I don't want it on the swimming platform. So there's the water. This water is not blue. The photograph, it's all dark greens and browns and grays. Almost the same color I'm painting with above. So let's see what I can do with this bristle brush here. Get some dark colors, greens, browns, grays. Some more in here. I need more of this stuff. Okay, so if I come back now and start right along in this area here and pull down, maybe a little blue, but oh man, I got more of my neutral tint in there than I wanted. All right, let's see here, just pull this down. So it's going to be gray with brown mixed in it. And it's probably not dark enough, but particularly over here it's got to be fairly dark. Okay, what makes that look like water? If you followed me, you've heard me say, it's these vertical strokes, vertical brush strokes. Make it look like water. And putting that wet over wet gives it even more distinctness. Okay. When I did this out plein air, I didn't have this water nearly dark enough. It was just way too light. Blue and brown gives me gray. Over here, let's put in some more. Got a bunch of brown in there they don't want to get on the paper, and I got too much blue now. Oh, I knew I was going to have trouble by opening up these new paints, or putting new paint on the palette. It's getting dried out on me over here. Interesting. Some of this I want to pull down and sort of give myself a variation in this so that it's not all okay. There, that's better. Okay, how are we doing with the so there is a little green in that, not too much, but there's some green back in here. As long as I don't keep going over this and going over this, this will blend out really nicely. I can come back and put in some darker colors over the top in a minute. But it basically is kind of, it's reflecting the trees up above, and so I don't want to destroy that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. It's light over here. Okay, I left a little ribbon back there. I'm going to come back and put in some of that greenish yellow that's reflecting back there, and I'll let that set now. I'm going to come back and get my get me some red, cad red, and a little of my burnt umber here to give me a sort of a reddish swim platform here. Try to make these brush strokes go the way the wood goes. If we can. Something like that. Change the color a little bit. So I just added a little bit of blue to that and picked up a nice little gradation in there. So that's the top of the swim platform. The side of it has a dark edge on it, so let me put a little of this bluish red here. Put these colors together, get myself a darker value, and just sort of pull it down here. It's hard for you to see that. It's a black, the photograph. All this came out black in the photograph. And if you saw me paint, I don't know, was it last month? I did an oil painting that was really almost all silhouette. And I lightened it up with my computer, and I could actually see the other boats on the dock like this, and so I was able to take those and make a lighter version of the sunset such that you could actually see the boats. But I had to do that with Photoshop to lighten up that painting so that it was very obvious. This is really dark under here, and that's not going to be dark enough. Get the darkest dark you can get. If you take red, and if you take your ultra blue and you take your crimson lake or alizarin crimson, and if you put some dark green in it, like I have this thing called cupric green over here, it's kind of like viridian. If you take those three and put them together, you can get a really dark color that's almost black, but it has tones of red, green, and blue in it. See me mixing that there. That's probably the blackest black you can get without putting actually black paint on. This has a little bit of a blue cast to it. That's the way I mixed it. Okay, that's the underside of that dock. Down here, I'm going to put in a little more my ultra blue, and get this darker under here. Where's my big rock? I actually have this shadow reflecting under here. Yeah, on the top of the rock. This all comes down this way to the top of this rock. So I'm putting this dark color with ultra blue with neutral tint, and putting it all in here. It's actually going along the top of this rock here. So I'm continuing the what's over here. I need to make this the same color back here, this water. And I didn't have it dark enough. I think I mentioned that when I put this water in back there. So I want it to be the same, almost the same color as I have on this side, if I can get it that way. And I'm using a flat brush to pull it out and just sort of give us there's a reflection of these bushes and all that sort of stuff in here. All right, now okay, let's see if I can get this more dark in here. I have a pillar that's holding this thing up. That's kind of in shadow back there. I'll leave that and sort of give me another so we're making good progress here. This sort of comes out, makes a little reflection of the dock above it. Comes out here like this, goes back and sort of gives me this kind of thing. Okay, like that. A little bit of darkness down around this rock here. There's a rock there. All right. I could spend a little more time on that, but I just sort of want to make it not such a hard edge there. Even though the photograph has a very hard edge, I want it to make it look like it's sort of water. And you do that by making more vertical strokes in it like that. Otherwise, you're not sure you're telling the viewer what that is. Okay. All right, we got some rocks down here. I got some more tree reflections in there, and I got another tree to finish off over there, and I'll be done with this. So these rocks over here on the left side, I'm going to use some of my gray colors, neutral tint. A little bit too dark, but I'm going to put in something to make it have a little more rough texture in there. That looks like the water, doesn't it? Well, you can fix that. You can make it look more like a rock by taking something like a credit card or take a knife like this, a blade, and actually come in and do scrapes like that. And if you have good rough paper, you'll be able to make some indentations that look like more like a rock than the water. So I've got top of this rock has got a little bit of a highlight on it, so I'm going to use this as the highlight color here. That's got to be a little lighter than that. Make it rough in some areas. Okay, hopefully that's looking a little bit like a rock. It's not tied together here very well with these hard edges right there, but we'll just pull it together with our brush. Over here we've got another rock that's kind of laying here, hiding in the weeds a little bit. I got one side on him right there. I'm going to put another side like this. Come on, change the color. I've got too much blue in there. Okay, so if I pull that down and around, I'm defining the rock below it. Another rock here. And I'm going to use the same little technique with my knife here. See if I can scrape out a little bit of a surface on the top of that that goes like, kind of like this. Okay, so it left a light edge here and a dark edge behind it. Don't have to do a whole lot more to that. Put a few crevices and things in this rock to make it look like there's, it's not part of the bank. I don't want it to look like it's part of the water. Make sure we have just some slight indentations in there that give us that rocky feel. There we go. All right, that looks more like a couple of rocks now. All right, one more rock and we'll have this little thing done. Let's see, this is a pretty good size rock here. I think I even made another rock. Here, I think I put a fourth one there, maybe. Okay, let's get some more dark in here. Make a separation so we make sure we know we're looking at different rocks. Now, use my blade again, see if I can pull off another. So that just making those little curves with your razor blade or with your credit card. You can use a credit card for this very nicely. These are in the foreground, so a little detail is not going to be too bad, not going to hurt. All right, I think maybe I just left another light rock right in here, maybe, I don't know. It looks like it might be a good place to put another rock. Make it darker than the one in front of it so that I have a good separation. And just use some clear water, so pull it together. And same trick here, put just a little bit of a scratches on it like that, give it some texture. All right, stop on that. The rest of that down in the foreground is weeds and stuff down here. There's another big tree over there. I think these trees in the middle here, I need to come back and do a little more tree work here in the middle to make those look like they're really reflecting. So I'm going to pick up some of my my browns here, still to grain brown, and I'm going to give you a there's one tree trunk. Here's another one right in here. A little one over here that goes this way. And this one sort of goes that way too. And I got one over here somewhere that goes down. I think this was it right here. All right. Needs to be darker around those things a little bit, so I'm going to see if I can get my bigger brush here and pull in a little more of my darker colors here. This gray, I'm going to use this. I got this dark, really dark black bluish color and my neutral tint, and I'm just going to see if I can put in a really light wash over the top of this. It's too much, not enough water in it. I actually have to repaint the trees almost in here to make it look close to what it looks like in the photograph, but paint those trees upside down. Something like that is what I'm trying to get to. And you can then you can always come back and sort of take your paper towel and help blur it a little bit by going sideways like this. It helps make the hard edge, some of the hard edges disappear and leave some of the softer edges in there. Okay, don't mess around too much here. I'm going to get it worse. Leave some light over here. This is going to be colored in. I'm going to put in another tree going up here like that. So my white area is going to be kind of restricted to right in there. All right, let's finish this thing up. Give me some greens here, get some blues. I'm going to do this tree over here on the right side. Too much blue. Wow, a lot of blue. Okay. See what I can do with this big brush. Something like that. I've really pretty much closed this whole side of the painting down for you, so you can't quite get out of it. Dark blues, darken it down quite a bit, like this. It's not darkening it much. A little more in there, a little more. Oh, did I leave the palette? Okay. Okay, there's at least a good solid tree trunk going up the middle of this thing. Pick up some of my browns and whatever and just restate that a little bit in there. Because this is not a reflection, this is actual tree that's here in the foreground, so I don't want it to look like it's a reflection of the other trees, so I want to make sure that it stands out. Mixing up my darks and lights and that sort of thing. Leaving these nice little wispy areas up here. Yeah. All right. The only thing left now is this little foreground area here that's got to have some greens and some. I don't know, I'm going to use my red with my green to get some gray colors and brown colors, and pretty much come in here and just use this brush and just do something like that. Put in a few more. This brush, when you use this bristle brush, kind of using this to make a point with it, it has all these bristles and they just become, you know, like 100 little paint brushes, and you can just kind of flick them in there like that, and as you pull up on it you end up with these nice little things that look like they're grasses and that sort of thing. Change the color, come back and put in a few more. Okay, let's see, I might put in just I don't need much more here. I was going to put in just maybe a few more specific things that kind of help finish this off, like something like that maybe, or it's a little too wet in there to be doing that. But there were little things growing out of the rocks and between the rocks, and you can kind of help show that by putting in a few little jobs like that. Put in a few things over here that have a little different color in them, maybe. Put in some things that have some tops on them, like they're like that. Okay. All right, folks, I think I've done about enough to this painting. We've been on this for at least an hour and 20 minutes. Oh, I forgot my area. I knew I was going to forget that area back there with the. So I see my big white snake running across there. So we need to come back and just sort of fill this in with some light colors. Mix it up and put in some change the color here and there, make it darker in some areas. Don't want a white snake running across the back of my painting here. So these are really kind of reflections. They're reflecting down in the water as well, so it doesn't hurt if they sort of overlap and run in. Put a few back in here. All right, I think I better quit before I get myself tangled up in anything else. I think it looks pretty close to the original in terms of how tall is the tree on the right? Good point. It really goes all the way off. It goes all the way up, and I probably didn't show it that way. So let me see if I can get another few brush strokes, get some dark colors in here. I'll just put in a few more things like this to help identify that tree, and a few more things like this. There, now that should tell you that thing goes all the way to the top, hopefully. I'll make it a little fatter at the bottom since it is going that far up. Put a few of those there. Hopefully that comes through on your screen better now. And I want to leave a little impressionistic down here in this corner. I don't want it to be too specific. I don't want you looking over there necessarily, but I want you to see that big trunk coming out. All right, I think I'm going to stop with that and say it's enough for that one. Got to find a way to sign it over here. I think I've got a little dry area right here that's got enough room for my block printing. Put my name on here. All right, now we've got a lot done, but I got another painting to do. So if you're going to stay with me, appreciate that. I'm going to go back to my back over to my easel, or back to my computer rather, and take you through the next painting. And while I change my easel over, I'm going to let you see a little video of the hiking trail that we took to get the next photograph. Okay, Heather, thanks for asking your good questions. Make sure I got. There we go. Okay, so there it is. It could be have a couple things to improve. This probably is not exactly right. I might want to touch that up. But for the most part, I've got a lot in there that I want to have in there as much as I can with watercolor. So let me go back to my computer, and I want to show you the next painting and cue up for you something to watch while I change my board over. So next painting is going to be this scene, which is the hiking trail on the what's called Roaring Lion Trail, and it was burnt out by a forest fire last year. My wife and I were out there last year, and we couldn't get on this trail because it was all on fire. And so they pretty much had it put out by the time we got there. But we took a hike through there this year, and all the dead trees around, but there's just tons of amazing growth, new growth coming out everywhere. Sun was hitting everything, new bushes, new flowers everywhere. The rocks were all cracked on the top from all the heat and then the cold and expansion from the winter to summer, and so all of the outer layer of these rocks were just chipped off from the tremendous heat that they've been through in that fire. There's my value map that I will show you now to see if I can get it into these three values or so. And then the sketch, again, which the sketch will be on my website when I get this edited and back uploaded again. And the little surprise I got for you is that I actually have a new toy or gadget that I want to show you. This is my drone. I bought a drone from DJI.com. It's called a Mavic Pro. And I was able, this is so compact and so lightweight, I was able to actually carry it on the plane with me and fly out to Montana with it. And when I got out there, I was able to fly about three different times and get some drone footage. So while I change over my board to get the next painting up, I'm going to show you a little video I've put together that's us going out to the trail, and then at the end of it there'll be a little drone flight where I flew over. And you can just watch that for about 4 minutes. It's like 4 minutes long. I'm going to change my board and be ready to go when you come back. That's the Roaring Lion Creek out there. You definitely see it in the trail. If all the trees were there, you might not see it. More of the creek. We've done a mile in about 30 minutes here, so doing pretty good. This is really over. There's the granite peak coming down here into this forest of burnt trees down to Roaring Lion Creek. Amazing. Really rocky, but there's a good path. Bam, okay. I've got one more to get over here, which is not too bad. Go this way, around that big tree. So I'm just going to start there. She's going to have to cut over and catch up with me. All right, am I right? Say that real loud. Here's all the feet print over here. Yeah, these are several little cairns here that show people the way. This tree is enormous. See many rocks like this out here that looks like the heat has caused them to chip the outer layer of granite or whatever was on them. The place is littered with rock chips that have come off in this fire. Probably made a lot of noise overlaying this. Here's the drone flight. That whole valley was burned a year ago. There's me with my hiking gear on and out of the car and taking the drone up to 110 feet. I thought 110 feet would be a long way to give you a good view, but in these mountains in Montana, 110 feet is nothing. So I would have had to go up to maybe 800, 1,000 feet, I don't know. This is in Montana. It's in an area near, actually it's near Hamilton, Montana, interestingly enough, my last name. And it's called the Roaring Lion Trail. It's number 125 out there in the Bitterroot Valley, which is where
pretty good.
We go very often.
Take a landing here, see if it brings home.
Love to take these hiking trails. There must be dozens of hiking trails. Some of them are 5 miles long, some of them are 20 miles long, and love to hike out there. This drone was coming down. It lost its bearings because of the terrain had a big drop off, and so I had to take control of it somewhere here and make it land on its own, like right there. So it was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'm back. I got my new board set up, and I may have to zoom out just a little, but I think we're ready to go again. Okay, folks, hope you enjoyed that. I thought I'd give you something a little bit interesting to look at. This is the area that actually I went to get the photograph that we're going to be painting now. This photograph came from the Roaring Lion hiking trail, and I'm going to put up my photograph, take down my other one. Meant to do that. I guess I wasn't completely set up after all. Here we go. Get this off of there, put this one up there. Okay, so you can see at the top of my easel now my my photograph here on the left. And again, it was a smoky day, very kind of foggy like. Skies were gray, and it was kind of hard to see any distance at all. That's why my drone flight didn't come off as much as I wanted. I wanted to get a little more better distance out of it, but with the smoggy conditions, I just barely got enough to could see the end of the valley where the fire had been. Okay, so this is the hiking trail, and we're going to see if we can do justice to this. And I think I'm going to zoom in here. Excuse me. I'm going to move this thing over so you can maybe see the whole palette all the time instead of me moving it around on you. There, about like that. Get this a little better aligned. Okay, there we go. That should be able to see all of that. Should be able to see the palette. Hopefully I won't have to move the palette at all, and I can just concentrate on painting. Okay, so the thing I didn't get done here is to use my kneaded eraser and sort of take out some of the graphite that's on here from my transfer process. It leaves a little bit more on here than I would like, but don't have a lot of choice in the short of putting pure graphite on the back of my paper to trace from. Don't have a lot of choice in these transfer products. So we'll get what we get. I'll take that top out, so I don't want that to be too hard up there. All right, I'm ready to go. If you guys are ready to go, you're still with me, and we'll get this going. So once again, I've got some clear water in my containers here, and I'm going to put some clear water at the top. See if we can get some depth in this painting. There's big canyons on the left, canyons on the right, and it was quite a interesting hike. It wasn't very rigorous. It wasn't too much of an incline during the hike, but it was started at about 4,400 feet, and we went up to about 4,800 feet, something like that, in like 30 minutes, and were able to turn around, come back, and still had time to fly my drone and get a few shots. So maybe if I can, if you like that, let me know. I'll try that again sometime if I can get a good drone shot of somewhere where I'm photographing and hiking and painting. This is not supposed to be a show about drones, but kind of got hooked on drones not long ago, and I kind of like the idea of taking them, particularly in places like this where you can go and get some very nice video. All right, in the back of this, we're going to probably put mostly gray, I think, because the skies were gray. I might put a little of my violet in there to sort of warm it up slightly, but I think it's going to be mostly gray. Don't have a lot of background here, but I want it to show you the sky. See if that's a little bit too dark, maybe a little bit lighter. It's almost the color I got in the last painting. Come in here. A good way to stop your paint from running if you're painting vertically, which most of you probably don't, is to like take a paper towel and put it down like this, and it will dry that edge where where you want the paint to stop going down, and that's usually a good way to do it. So just vertical strokes here. Take it from one side, we'll just lighten it up as we move across. Get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. Now, if you notice the photo, it doesn't really look exactly like this. It looks a lot grayer, but I'm trying to paint something that covers many, many, many hundreds of yards. Trying to put it on a 11 by 14. This is still 11 by 14. I should have mentioned that earlier. It's just in the portrait mode, portrait format, which means it's longer than it is wider. And if I were painting a portrait of you, this is the way I would set my paper up in portrait mode. That's where that term comes from. Okay, let's see if we can do something on this mountain in the background here. And since it's still a little bit wet, I think when I start putting the paint on up here, it's going to hopefully get sort of fuzzy at the top and give me some, it's drying out up here is what the problem is. So I want it to make it softer at the top. It's just about soft edges. You want to make something look misty and far away. Give it some soft edges. And make it a little bluer and a little bit more violet as it goes back in the distance. I'm putting some clear water on here again because it already has dried up a little bit. I'm going to pull this all the way down in here actually. I'm going to continue down with it. Clear water, just pull it down. So this is how we're getting this misty, foggy look here, by just adding water to whatever little bit of paint that's on the paper. Pull it all the way down to the bottom of the trees actually. Bit too much in there, but clear water helps you just sort of paint this down. Change it up a little bit. I didn't want it to be all one color. Put a little extra violet in there and some spots. Put a few touches of the neutral tint in there to give it some other textures and other things. So it looks like there's some part of the mountain that's coming down, some's on top. And we're just giving it this smoky look. I'm getting a little running here. I gotta get back on my board. All right, so this, so I'm just, you see what I'm doing up here? This is wet, so I'm just sort of coming back in, and while it's wet, I'm putting in some other brush strokes to give it some additional texture that helps it stand out, makes it look like it's foggy back in there somewhere, and that's kind of the way it looked when we looked up. So Heather, you were asking how I was going to make that thing look atmosphere. So that's the trick right there. Soft edges. Use clear water and blend it together. Don't use too much water, or you'll end up getting runs and blossoms and that sort of thing. But just pull it together like this. Vertical strokes help tell the story even somewhat. Down here it starts changing colors. I'm going to bring in just a a little bit of my burnt sienna, mix it with this violet I've got on the palette here, and start changing that color a little bit because it's a little bit closer, and so I want to start putting in that as my base color here. And it comes down and starts hitting into the current foreground or middle ground. So this is this is burnt sienna with my ultraviolet and neutral tint. I'm painting right over where these trees are going to go because the trees are all going to be darker. So I just want to leave that, pull it down in there and let it go. All right, so I'm getting a lot of paper covered here very quickly. It's all background stuff, so just want to soften these edges. Don't leave a lot of hard edges down here. That also helps give it a smoky story. Okay, good. Now, this is all pretty dry down here. My path starts here and goes back this way and goes behind that tree. It's getting a little wet back there. I don't want to get into that too much yet. But leave room for that path back there. Hopefully it's going to remind me to leave room for that path. All right, so all right, making good progress here. We've been going about an hour and 45 minutes. All right, so now I'm going to try to fill some of that in. I sense just a little need for a little bit more color in here in some of these areas. I want it to sort of tie together a little bit better with some abstract shapes. If you look at that, I got a lot of abstract shapes all over the place there. Left the sky fairly light, made this darker, and brought it down. You can barely see it there. Probably put in just a little bit of another distinguishing here. You can see that ridge. That's better, I think. It helps it stand out. At least you know the mountain is coming down. All right, but there's enough light areas here that it also makes it look foggy and smoky, which is what I was trying to do. All right, it's still pretty wet. Down here is pretty dry. I think maybe I'm going to pick up some of my raw sienna. That may be a little too yellow. A little ochre in it, I don't know. Let's see if I can get a color. I want to get some color here that I'm going to put underneath these trees and go down into my path. Path is going to have multiple colors in it, from reds. Probably use some of this beautiful still to grain brown. A little bit of that over here. All right. So all of this scenery in here has it's got some areas that are painted around some rocks, trees. Let's see. down to the edge of the path. The path is over here. So I'm consciously making these brush strokes go down the way to the path that I want you to believe the path is. Okay. Not too bad. This has got some more rock in here. So I'm just going to make this look sort of, leave some room for some rocks and other things like flowers and keep it going down toward the path. Again, the path is like right here. Got a big thing of paint right there. I'm still using this 1-inch brush, folks. I've only used this 1-inch brush almost the whole day. Somehow it gives me, forces me to be abstract. It forces me to be loose. And I think that's why I like to use it, because okay, so that's just the side of the hill coming down, and I can come back now and if I need to darken some areas, give it a little more texture. Right now it's sort of one color, so I'm going to come in and put in some other brush marks that just sort of help tell you there's some change in the terrain that helps point you to the path, like that. I'm leaving this for area for flowers and greenery and that sort of thing. The path really goes across here like this. I don't know if I can get that sandy color here or not. I'll try to see if I can find it. That's almost it. So I'm just still using this brush to pull in the path. Room for rocks, room for pine cones. There must have been thousands of pine cones that had dropped off of these trees as they were burning. And that's how the forest reestablishes its trees, is with the pine cones. They actually have to be burned in order to regrow. So I'm just putting in this path so I can hopefully remember where it is and not get distracted here with other things. When I start putting rocks in and other stuff, I might paint right over that path. So I'm making this path an abstract shape. I'm just going to sort of blend it out here. Okay, that's the path going back, and it goes back in behind this tree right here. Continues on behind this tree. Actually, that's not actually in the photo, but I put it in there for artistic sake. All right, so this is sort of angled down into a footpath, if you will. So I'll try to make that look like that. All right, this is getting drier up here now. I think I'm gonna see, I don't know how that looks to you on camera. It probably is a little bit pretty white. Let's see, get me some still to grain brown out here. These trees are really all black. It was actually, talked to one forest ranger and told him we're going to take the Roaring Lion Trail, and she says, "Oh, that's awfully dirty." well, it was dirty because all the charcoal that was on the trees. So if you actually missed your step and were trying to keep from falling down, you might grab a tree and end up with all this dark charcoal on your hands. But this particular trail was smooth enough, even though the scene you may have seen was very rocky and a lot of stuff to step on there. We didn't get all that dirty, thankfully. All right, I'm going to see what I can do with some of these trees here now, see what they look like. There's one. Okay. Change the color a little bit, give me something a little more, a bit different color. This was a pretty, these are all pretty small, I guess, most of these. Tons of little trees growing around here. This big old 1-inch flat brush really makes a good tool for just stamping the tree in. All right, I could probably do this for a half an hour and really bore you guys. Let's make this a little less brown, a little more gray maybe. If I can get some more violet in there, I don't know. My brush likes to split apart a little bit if I don't have enough water in it. Okay, so here's a bigger one. Okay, so I'm still making them more brown than they are black. Grayer, I guess. Show you another little trick with the knife, not knife, but the razor blade. Good way to use a razor blade is to get paint on the edge of it, and you can actually stamp in. If you get enough paint on it, you can. See if it works. Yeah, there's a way to make another really thin line for a tree. I've used this on masts for sailboats, that type of thing. You got to keep going back to the palette and messing with it. It's a little bit too slow for me sometimes, but that's another way to make really fine lines in your painting. Getting a nice brush like this that holds a good edge is really a good way to do it. Just have to make sure that it holds a good edge, and you can just sort of stamp it in there. You don't have to do a lot of messing with it. So I want to take this guy right up to about here and keep him going on up. Got some more coming down. Here's a big one. Bring it down. All right. Got a few bigger trees in here. Let me keep saying I'm going to change the color, but it doesn't really change. Again, ask me if you have any questions, folks. Interested in this area? It's really a beautiful area. If you like hiking, you can take hikes about as easy or rough as you want in this area, the Bitterroot Mountains in Montana. This was one that's broken off. It was dangerous out there. We were told by the ranger these dead trees don't have much holding them up. And so they actually can fall on you and kill you. Some of the trees we saw on our hike were so large that if they would have fallen on us, I wouldn't be here painting for you today. I'll make this go through here like this and come down. So when you do this painting, you can put in as many trees as you want. Try to make it interesting. Try to make them different heights, different widths, different distances apart if you can. Even though in a forest like this, they're probably all very identical. You can still use your artistic license and make them different widths and different heights. Because in the aftermath of a fire, there would be all kinds of sizes and shapes. Another one over here. Probably getting tired of seeing me do this, aren't you? Repeat, repeat. Now this would be a good candidate to do speed painting when you're doing the same thing over and over. I don't do speed painting videos, but I know some people that do and could really take advantage of this. Okay, we got another big one right here. I'm definitely going to make that a different color. Come on, let's get something more gray, maybe. I'm going to give it a little more variation too. I'm going to paint this left side and then come back and go over it again with a little bit lighter brush stroke, and see if I can, as I widen it out, some of that will dry, and pick up another value maybe here around this, like this. These trees did have places where the bark has actually come off, and it's starting to turn like, almost like the ground color here, the ground color of the ground. So I let that dry just a little, come back with just a little bit of light water over it, and I'm leaving interesting colors in there, putting a little brown to show you this is something we saw, where the bark was actually coming off the tree and giving us a different color. Okay, got another big one right here, and I think that's going to be it for this. I may come back and put a few more
thin ones in with my rigger brush here in a minute, but basically I'm going to finish this off here. Then we'll work on rocks and flowers and that kind of stuff and be done. I don't know if it'll take us that long to do this painting. Okay, we're still going well. Just get some water in there and sort of feather it out. Okay, and some of these I might put a little more definition on them maybe. Make them just a little bigger. Alright, so it's got some interest in it. There's a lot of greenery down in here. That's what I really want to show you. A lot of rocks down here on this side, and the path then goes back in, and got some nice shadows coming across there. Alright, that is plugging here. Give me some more paper. I think I'm going to, while I still got this, all of this color in my palette before I clean it out, I'm going to go back and just flick in now some more brush, some more. There was, tons of small things growing back here that were all burnt up. So I want to help make that believable, that there's a lot of trees back in here that were just filling out this woods all over the place. So this goes fast. Okay. Okay. Enough of that. Enough of that. Oh, I know what I didn't put on. I didn't put on the all of the branches. Well, I got this stuff going on. I've got to come in here and put in the some of these branches that had leaves and whatever's left. Some of these had stuff on them that I want to show you. And some of these have little things all burnt off. Some of them still have some things on them. I don't know if you can see it that well or not, but alright, and if I come back now with my flat brush, you get it fairly dry. A lot of paint, a little water. Same colors here. I'm going to see if I can do something similar to what I did in that last painting, except these are going to be flat brush, flat. There we go, getting some. So these are all burnt These are all burnt areas of the trees that are still hanging on. They haven't fallen off. So basically this technique of just using a flat brush, fairly dry brush, enough paint, but so we still see that. There's some even down in these areas here that's kind of filling that out. Over here there's a lot right in this area. Just a little more water. I'm getting too dry there, I think. Using this colors I got in my palette here and just sort of that type of stuff. Over here I got some more that I'm going to pop in. Not a dry brush. Okay. So I think I've left a nice set of textures out there that help you see what's going on with that woods. All right, stop on that. Down here we've got some more stuff that's sort of growing up out of the ground in some areas that are left over from what was burnt. Let's see here, need a little more water, I think. Pull into the grasses down below. Okay. Still quite a bit of dry brush, but I'm getting a little more water in some of it here. Kind of get a little bit of a flavor that there's more back there in the background, that put a little glaze on it, kind of helps tie it together a little better. Okay, I think I'm going to stop on this brown now unless I see some more areas where I need it, I think. And if I need more, I'll just come back and create some more, but I want to get this out of the palette and start working on my greens and my flowers and my this other middle ground, foreground stuff. Okay, I think we're doing good time-wise. Okay, I think we're ready to put some finishing touches on this job. The grasses had I still got too much dirt in here. Get this mud out. All right. All right, I'm going to see if I can make these grasses some good lemon yellow color. Try my other yellow over here. See what I can get. Okay, so I've got my two yellows out there. Take my ultra, I'm going to try this ultraviolet and see what that does with these colors. It's going to gray it down. It's going to give me a gray because the violet and the yellows are sort of complementary colors across the color wheel from each other. Alright, so I'm ultra blue and my primary yellow are giving me that green. My sap green is going to give me that green. So I've got a darker green, a lighter green, and I've got this purplish color that I'm going to come in and use for some shadows. But basically I want to come in here and do the something similar. Take some water out of the brush, and this is a lot of greenery right in here. Fill this in with big bushes. Gonna stick up here, get some other colors. It's not very dark, is it? See, trail is down here, so this is all green, new growth. Go in behind that tree, come out with the same color. The other side. Make sure of that. Pick up some other colors, gray it down a little bit, mix it in. Appreciate you guys all staying with me today. It's kind of fun to kind of relive the experience of where we were and kind of what we did. Relive it while we still remember it. Okay, I'm getting a pick up some darker colors and put up in here to give us this a bit of this look of, these are almost like kind of look like ferns a little bit. They had this nice little top on them, and they were nicely growing back in there. All right. Nice layer of color there. Now, I've got room for rocks, I got room for flowers. I'm going to put in some more grass area stuff in here like this. That's not quite dark enough, and the brush is too big. Get me my 1/2-inch brush here and see if I can put in a few things that look like they're grass is growing out of the dirt right here. I want that yellow on top. That yellow is a nice color to put on top if I can let you see it. Back here like that. All right. Let's put in some green fronds of some kind, or light green. All right, there's some more grasses down here. All right, I'm just sort of filling this in where I'm not really trying to slavishly follow the photograph here anymore. I'm sort of just filling in what looks right to me right now based on what's going on in the painting. Got a hard edge on the bottom of that tree there. Got another hard edge over here. So I need to do something to soften that a little bit. think I'm putting in more light colors than there actually were out here, but it's going to make the painting probably more pleasing than having it all dark and black and dirty. At least I hope so. See if we're still doing okay here. Yep. All right. A few things here to tie that together. Maybe a couple things down here to tie that into the ground, so you don't see that hard edge quite so much. Okay. There's all kind of stuff growing out here. There's little flowers and trees and all kind of stuff starting. Okay, making good progress. Definitely running over time, folks. Sorry about that. I hate to run too far over, but I want to finish this and give you a good painting. So let's get on with these rocks. Here's some rocks. There's some rocks. Even a little highlight edge on the top of them. Some darker colors in the bottom. Leave another little highlight edge here, and then okay. The trick I'm using is I'm leaving little areas between these rocks, calling it a highlight edge, but basically it's an area that lets me separate, paint a little faster, lets me keep them separate from the ones above it or below it. So there, make this a little bit pick up a few browns in there. Try to keep the rocks gray as much as possible, but they do have some browns in them. Put another rock in here like this. I haven't used my scraper yet. I'm going to get a big rock right here and scrape part of it out, I think, as long as it's still wet. Yeah, so I'm not paying too much attention to the rocks in the photograph here, but I'm going to just put in a few scrapes that tell you there's something going on there with those rocks. Leave those little white areas for highlights. Over on the other side we got some rocks going on over here. Got different colors. I'll make this come down like this. If you see, we've got a trail that's at the sort of the bottom of a little bit of a cliff here, not a cliff, but just the bottom of the hill basically. So my brush strokes should tell you this is going down here into this area. Another little rock right here. Use my water to just sort of over here we got some more rocks. Let's go back and got some nice colors in this brush. I actually lucked out by getting some brown in there in some areas. Okay, good progress here, getting close. Hang with me, folks, and we'll be done shortly. Okay, come back here and get a little bit of a scraping going on. That's all too dry. This is about right, maybe. Yeah. All right, now we got a bunch of these grasses and stuff all growing in here. We're coming out over the hiking trail. Pick up some darks. Just flick in some stuff like this. Haven't put in any flowers yet, but I'm getting ready to. Okay, that's that. All these nice little magenta colored flowers out there. Need a little blue in them, a little bit too pure magenta is a little bit too much. Maybe redder than that. Okay, let's get a little bit of a. I'll try to dry the brush out, see if I can pop in a few. Something like that, a little darker at the bottom of them if we can. Help define them a little better. Using the side of this brush and just flicking up. So I'm warming it up. I'm giving you a lot of interesting colors here, filling in with the round brush. Probably could even use this brush to sort of give us use some of those bristles. Those bristles really help you define that, help you put those little flicks of color in there. Just gonna fill this out, color it in so it's not so bright. See if I can. Sort of blending it together now, getting rid of some of those white. Okay, so that's starting to show color in there. Got some color over here maybe. So the technique by just using this bristle brush, it sort of helps you pull some stuff together. I don't want to forget my shadows. I got some interesting shadows coming across there. Let's see if I can get a few more darks in here in these rocks, and we'll be about done, except for some shadows. Pop in a few things here like this. See what that looks like. Getting too detailed over here probably, but where'd my brown go? There we are. Okay. Getting close, folks. Let's put some more green in here. Okay, I'm getting some nice colors in there that look like there's green stuff growing over the rocks. Shadows are going to tell you where the sun's coming from. So I want to put those in, hopefully not too dark. They're like coming right across here like this. More water. So these shadows sort of model the path. And then they sort of go up this way and help tell you that path is down the bottom of this little bit of a valley here. Okay, and one more thing I want to drop in is some pine cones. We had pine cones everywhere, like there, right? Here's a little pine cone, there's some in here, a few over here. I don't know if you even be able to tell what those are. They may be too blobby to tell what they are. They're kind of big. Some of them are kind of bigger than I wanted to make them, but all right, I think that's gonna hold. I'm gonna get myself a brush full of dark paint here. You know what's coming next? Little splatters. It's almost too almost too dark maybe, but probably don't recognize them as pine cones, but throw in some of these whites over here, some whites up here. I want to fill in maybe just so we don't have too much, don't like a lot of white blobs floating around. Kind of distracts the eye, but this is sort of the scene that I wanted to do for you today. And I think it's time to see if I can find a place to sign my name and call this thing completed. All right. Really thank you folks for all staying with me, and I want to thank you for being here again today and putting up with my extra long session. I thought I was going to get done a little earlier than this, but I hope you like this painting. I hope you give it a try, and let me know how you do. Tell me if you have trouble with it or have any questions with it. I'll be glad to answer your questions on YouTube. And if you get a chance to go out to Montana, check this area, the Bitterroot Valley out. It's got a lot of beautiful scenery, a lot of beautiful trails,
and I recommend it highly. So check out my website, check out my Facebook page. Sketches will be on my website when I get this edited in a couple, 3 days. I'll put a new version up on YouTube for the final painting, and so you can always have that to watch the full thing. I usually edit out some of the stuff that I do here live when you're watching live, so I'll take pieces of this out, and won't be quite as long, but I will try to have everything in there, mistakes I make and whatever else. So I think that's all I wanted to talk to you about today and show you. I hope you like it, and until I see you again, this is Larry Hamilton saying so long for now. Bye-bye.